Great. So thank you for dimming the music there. And thank you, Ruth, and our youth finance panelists there. That was really interesting. We are going to move now. We're going to change gears. We're running a little bit behind, about 15 minutes, and it's my plan to make that up. I'm going to shave a little bit off the break, which will be after this session. Just a quick reminder that all of the presentations that you're seeing on the screen today and yesterday will be uploaded to the Young Africa Works website. That will likely happen within the next 24 hours or so. And then the videos of all the sessions are going to be uploaded as well. When the videos are uploaded, we will send an email out to all participants with a link to exactly where they are, but you can find all of this in the resource section of the website. So, quick show of hands, how many people visited Harambee on Wednesday? That's what I like to see. Lots of hands. Lots of hands. So that's great. We've been very impressed with Harambee's market scoping process and how that feeds into the skills development programs that they've created. So we asked Nicola, Galombik and Lindiwe Gadd here to share a little bit more about their approach, give us a little bit more background. Nicola is Executive Director of Yellowwoods, which is a holding company with businesses in financial services, hospitality, and in the leisure sector as well. She's also co-founder of the Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator. And it's worth mentioning that the Youth Employment Accelerator was recently selected as one of the 4 2015 Global McNulty Prize laureates. And Lindy is a senior advisor at McKinsey and Company who have been partnering with Harambee in this area. So without further ado, I think we're going to kick off with a video. No? No? Okay, great. I'll hand it over.
Thank you. Lindy and I are going to do a song and dance alongside some videos. So we're thrilled that there are many of you in the room who are familiar with Harambee. So bear with me if some of you hear a few things for the second time, but hopefully you're going to go into a bit more of a demand-focused view today. So the Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator is a labor market change intervention. And it basically is designed to pathway young unemployed first-timers into the economy, into jobs or work opportunities into the economy, and make sure that they can get and keep their first jobs. And this is a very important lead into their economic participation beyond that, whether to continue to be employed or to move into entrepreneurship later on. Now, the most important feature of Harambee, and its founding principle, it was founded by a group of businesses, as mentioned, although it is a not-for-profit business, is that it is demand-focused. And it starts where the jobs are, trying to understand what are the opportunities in the economy that can absorb and be available for young people, and then to understand why young people from poor families are not accessing those opportunities, and what is the most simple, affordable, and effective way to solve the demand-supply mismatch between those opportunities and young people from poor families. Now, I mean, we would say that our demand-focused approach is really the key to Harambee's success. It has been the key because it delivers a triple win. Employers win because they get access to a new pool of talent, they get improved retention, they get improved progression, and they get growth of a pool of where skills are scarce. Young people win not just because they get good employability programs and pathways into learning and work readiness programs, but most importantly because they get line of sight of other young people succeeding. And they feel proximity to opportunity, and that drives and motivates their own investment in themselves and in their own employability journeys. And through the virtuous cycle of employers winning and young people winning, we have a dynamic that then gathers momentum, and government and society as a whole wins, and the labor market starts to shift and gain momentum. And What I'm hoping you'll get, I'm going to show a sort of overview video, which starts with the voices of some young people who were locked out of the economy, and to give you a sense of an overview of the Harambee model, which will just give you context for those of you who don't know the South African youth unemployment scenario very well. Is there a problem with the video? Okay. Okay, well, I was going to show you an overview of the Harambee model.
I was sitting at home doing nothing. You wake up, you think, what's next? Sitting by the gate, you see people passing by, same people, you be greeting them, hey, hater, hater.
It was a stressful situation, having to find a job, knowing that I came straight from grade 12.
Most of our youth are at home, they are not studying, they are not working.
And like you be hanging around the township because you won't be going out there and looking for work because you know that as a person who doesn't have experience, like they wouldn't even consider you. So you'll just sit at home in despair.
It was painful because every time I submit a CV and wait for a response, no one would respond.
I saw a lot of people not knowing what to do with their lives.
My mom is a single parent, so she was really hoping that I could get a job.
The challenge that I faced the most was not growing up in a family that has a father and a mother.
Inside, there is something new that you want to bring out, knowing that you can be a great asset at workplace.
Today, 1 out of every 2 of our young South Africans are unemployed, giving us the 3rd highest unemployment rate in the world. Even though there are jobs available, many of the thousands of learners that matriculate and graduate every year aren't necessarily ready for the workplace and are being excluded from the labor market, especially those who've been exposed to high levels of poverty and social exclusion for most of their lives. Their matric results don't say much about their real potential, and it's hard to access job opportunities if you don't have networks or the necessary behaviors and skills required by employers. And even if you do have networks, getting and keeping a job is almost impossible without enough cash for transport or internet access. There have been many programs set up to help and train young people, but too few of these have translated into actual jobs. Until now. Harambee is a new kind of youth employment accelerator. It was founded by a group of South African employers who partnered with the government and many others to build a solution to youth employment that could work on a big scale. And it starts where the jobs are, with employers who have a real need. Harambee utilizes research and insights from partner employers to understand exactly what they need, then actively sources, carefully selects, and matches the candidates that have the best chance of success in that job and environment. And when we find a match that works, bridging for that role begins. Whether it's punctuality, conversational English, computer literacy, operating machinery, or learning how to sell or serve people well. Our candidates are young people with a lot of potential and a real hunger for opportunity. But because they come from poor households, they're locked out of the job market and are at risk of falling into long-term unemployment. Harambee is their ticket to a concrete work opportunity and their bridge into success in the workplace. Harambee's results speak for themselves. We have successfully connected almost 100 South African employers to a new pool of work-ready talent. we've enabled 10,000 young South Africans to find and keep their first job. And we've helped tens of thousands more to get closer to work. Through our business and government partnerships, we have created a successful youth employment accelerator, which will reach hundreds of thousands of work seekers over the next 5 years. As our delivery expands, our understanding is deepening and our partnerships are growing. This makes Harambee a real force in the fight against unemployment. And this is how we can unlock the potential of South Africa's youth, together.
Okay, so as the video indicated, Harambee starts where the jobs are. And we really want to focus in on that theme in this session. About 18 months ago, we did a refresh on our demand-side understanding of, at a macro level, the South African economy, trying to understand where are the jobs, what are the jobs, and what will they be over the coming 5 years. And we partnered with McKinsey and Company in that process. And Lindy is going to share with you an example of some of the learnings around the agriculture sector in South Africa that emerged from that research, although we replicated that across all sectors in the economy.
Thanks, Nicola. So where we're going to look at is just take a snapshot of the current agricultural sector in South Africa and what is the situation with regards to employment at the current moment. And then we're going to look towards the future in terms of the progression of the potential of the agricultural sector to progress over the next few years, and the very exciting opportunities that that then creates for youth employment. If we take a look at this chart, effectively, there are a large number of jobs in the agricultural sector which talk to the youth that Nicola was speaking about a few moments ago. Youth who do not necessarily have formal educational qualifications, but who have a yearning for employment and a set of competencies rather than a set of qualifications, which would make them actually eligible for the employment market if employers were willing to look beyond formal qualification. So generally within the agricultural sector, you would have a large number of people with large number of jobs, which are really in the elementary type of area within there. So those are the typical jobs we think of in the agricultural sector, which is around farm hands, forestry laborers, and really sort of labor-intensive jobs which do not require a large, significant qualification. We also have a number of operational jobs which were slightly higher in the skills value chain, but also do not necessarily require significant qualifications, but rather competencies and attributes which talk to exactly the kind of attributes that Harambee looks at in its model. If you look at the breakdown of the agricultural sector and employment within the agricultural sector today, you'll find that about 45% of the jobs within the agricultural sector in South Africa are actually of youth and those under the age of 35, between the ages of 18 and 35. And this is a little bit counterintuitive given the fact that we are a country, like many other developing countries, where the youth are actually the majority of the population. And therefore, you would think that the proportion of youth who are employed in agriculture would be significantly higher. And this is, as we would all know, is very much largely because agricultural jobs are predominantly in rural areas, which is, for various lifestyle reasons, unattractive to the youth. But also, there is just generally a negative attitude towards jobs in agriculture. It is not something that youth tend to aspire to. If we take a look in terms of what kind of qualifications, which I've already spoken to a little bit a few moments ago, you'll see again that within the agricultural space currently, there are a large number of jobs, the majority of jobs, actually talk to people with a matric qualification or less. There are a small number of jobs which really require you to have a tertiary qualification or a postgraduate qualification within the sector. And this creates major opportunities for youth who are entering the job market, youth who may have been failed by the education system, who may have dropped out of the education system, but now find themselves with the financial responsibilities really of young adults and adults. And many of these may indeed be heads of family households themselves, and therefore requiring income in order to support not just themselves, but also their dependents. When you take a demand-side view of employment, as Harambee does, it's very important, as Nicola has said, and she will show a little later, that you really take a very granular view of where the jobs actually are. It's not about taking the jobs to the people, but it's actually understanding that this is where the jobs are. This is what the employers are actually requiring, and that is really meeting the demand-side model. Now, what's very interesting out of this chart is that if you look at, for example, migratory patterns within the country at the moment, you'll find that there is a large amount of migration into an area such as Gauteng, which is really the industrial center of South Africa. But if you take it from an agricultural perspective, there are a large number of opportunities which would reside in provinces which are outside of that center. The Western Cape, obviously, there is a large amount of inward migration. But if you look at places like Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and the Eastern Cape, they're not typically areas where one tends to think of inward migration, or indeed the youth actually staying in those areas. They tend to be pulled by the larger urban areas. And what the Harambee model actually does is that it tries and matches those jobs in those locations with employment opportunities and youth who are seeking employment. So this level of depth of analysis and information is very important when you're looking at demand-side youth employment. Taking a little bit of a different trend, looking towards the future and the development opportunity within the agricultural space. If you look at historically, over the last few years, the agricultural sector in South Africa has been stagnating. And it is what I call the Cinderella sector of the South African economy. We focus very largely on the services sector, banking, tourism, industrialization and manufacturing. And agriculture, as a result, has really suffered as a result of poor policy implementation. For example, agricultural land is really competing very heavily with residential land, with mining, and with various other commercial activities, which has really reduced the amount of land available for agriculture. You'll also, part of this is also around the fact that there has been very little attention to agricultural policies such as land redistribution. So, for example, we've had a large land redistribution policy, program in this country. However, the continued productive use of that agricultural land has been stymied. There are numerous areas in rural areas where land has been redistributed, for example, and has actually turned from productive agricultural land into what I call farming shacks or farming residential areas. And this has significantly reduced the production of agricultural land in this country. However, there is an upside. There is a potentially positive future to agriculture in this country. And this is very much around the move from the primary agricultural sector into the agro-processing sector. And this has the potential to create a significant amount of jobs in the future as it moves up the developmental trajectory. And you'll see that within this new potential future, we have about 124,000 jobs which can be created in agro-processing, and a large number of jobs which can also be produced in the smallholder sector of the agricultural sphere. And particularly the agro-processing sector has a new future and creates opportunities for new types of jobs which potentially are much more attractive to the youth of today, and I'll speak a little bit about that. If you then take just the natural trajectory, and I know I'm talking about the South African agricultural sector, but if you look at it from a trajectory of agriculture, for many of the countries across the African continent, as agriculture begins to develop, this is a very relevant story and a relevant trajectory, which will become the trajectory of the future of many of these countries. So if agriculture is to move increasingly towards the agro-processing sphere, it then creates a new paradigm of job opportunities for youth in the country. For example, you're looking into the areas of retail. And again, people don't naturally see the linkage between the fact that you have an agricultural sector, but the retail sector is very much a part of this. And as we all know, retail produces a large number of jobs which don't necessarily require higher qualifications, but talk very much to competencies and attributes of individuals. And these are the challenges that many of the youth face today. If you look as well at, for example, trade and agro-processing, it also creates a number of new job opportunities which would speak, for example, towards manufacturing, towards mechanized jobs, towards working in the transport industry. Again, these are opportunities within the agricultural space that are typically not seen as being relevant to the agricultural sector or for jobs within the agricultural sector. Again, taking another granular look in terms of where are these jobs within the potential jobs within the agricultural growth. A large majority of these would be in around the areas of fruit production and vegetable production, in the area of beverages and spirits and vinegar, but also in animal products within the livestock industry. And these are all much higher in the value chain of the agricultural sector, therefore creating a new type of agriculture and a new type of employment opportunity for the youth within the future. My final point is around the opportunity as smallholder farmers, and I think this talks very much to, again, matching the location of opportunity with where people are. We've done a study which looked at the Tshwane metropolitan area, particularly around the opportunity for smallholder farmers. And there is an opportunity very much for agriculture within urban areas with much smaller plots of land of 5 hectares or less. And again, this creates opportunities not just in agricultural production, but there are agro-processing centers, there are cold storage opportunities within the cold storage sector, there are opportunities within logistics, and transportation, but also it creates an opportunity to create jobs within the creation of the infrastructure and the infrastructure around this. So the future of job creation in agriculture can be particularly positive. I think it just requires us to take a little bit of a holistic view and a more open-minded view with regards to what the opportunities are and how we match the youth.
Thanks, Lindy. So, off the back of that demand-side analysis, what does Harambee do with all of that? And how does that link to the supply side, to the pool of young people? Where are they? Who are they? What are their aspirations? And what are their challenges in accessing or retaining any of these opportunities? And might they be interested in them, and what would make them interested in them, and where and whom? So, in answering these questions, Harambee has, I think, learned a great deal. Some of them about demographic features and some of them about psychographic features of young people. The first, and so just to share a few of those, I mean, I'm going to do these by way of example rather than comprehensively. I think the first important thing is that when you're a young person living in a poor household where there's unstable income or no family income other than occasional social grants, the main deficit in relation to accessing opportunity in the economy is actually your social networks. That is your key deficit, because globally, the way any young person gets a first job or work opportunity that isn't at home is through a social network. And what Harambee has been able to do is effectively be a virtual or alternative social network that is able to effectively be, you know, the uncle that knows someone who can give you a first job and who can speak for you and who can refer you and who can help you have the signals you need to land that first opportunity. What you see here is the Harambee Contact Center in Johannesburg. So even though you went to Harambee in Cape Town, you didn't see this. This is our national call center. And we're processing applications from hundreds of thousands of young people, putting them through a very sophisticated and elaborate set of assessment processes that help us effectively be a clearinghouse for young people, to help pathway them and to hold them through a journey of not just employability, but of matching themselves into opportunity and linking them to opportunity in the economy. A second really important learning is that transport really matters. Certainly in South Africa, this is a very big feature of youth unemployment. So transport matters because it's too expensive to access work opportunities, and transport matters because what this slide shows you, based on our data, is that there is a direct correlation between how much of your take-home pay you spend on getting to work and your likelihood to be retained in work. And it's really, really important to understand the economics of work being proximate to where I live and not being so far from where I live that either that I incur more transport costs or I have to incur new living costs. So the relationship between wages and costs of work are really important to understand. The psychographic and individual attributes of young people and what I think Jim on the first day called their imagined futures are individual. These are no longer demographic. These are now organized and distributed across the population in a different way. They're distributed on the basis of psychographic profiles. Whether I'm good for sales or service, or whether I'm good with whether I'm suited to machine operation or to entrepreneurial activity, those are attributes of a person, and the fit of a person to a job is extremely important as a likelihood of predictor of their success in that job. And there are a range of other behavioral readiness and psychographic fit issues that are as important predictors of success as what most people talk about as skills, which actually, when you hear our employer voices later, never gets mentioned. So our battery of assessments has been very important, and one of the startling and alarming, but also useful findings, needless to say, is that where we have a very poor schooling system, as we do in South Africa for the majority of people, there's a very, very low correlation between a young person's potential, their cognitive, their fluid intelligence, their learning potential, their problem-solving capability, many of which are things that employers and the economy most values, and their actual performance in competence tests or numeracy or English or literacy tests. Whereas most employers are using tests or qualifications as their benchmarks for entry. So you have a significant mismatch around the tests that employers are using, or the proxies employers are using to assess somebody, and the actual potential of that young person. What Harambee's key, I think, contribution to changing the labor market has been is to work with our 200 now employer partners to really shift their thinking and their practices around what are the right signals, what are the right proxies for a young person's potential, and can we ignore qualifications frameworks, can we ignore certificates and understand other proxies that could be used. I'm going to show you now what employers need and value.
Businesses have scale, they have particular needs, and that if we leverage off our businesses, we can introduce social innovations and ideas that can have extensive impact that will last into the future. The opportunity to get individuals out of the unemployed young workforce is significant, and the quality of those individuals is fantastic if they just have the right kind of preparation.
This is a business prerogative, and we don't have a choice. We need a growing pool of skilled people, and we have to make a plan.
You don't have to sacrifice business results in order to build social capital.
Currently, I have one of the Galombik guys who was my top agent in the month of December, and now obviously is consistent and in the top 3 going forward.
Getting people in with experience ticks a certain number of boxes. Yes, okay, they might know a bit more about the industry, what a customer may want, but they come with other hang-ups that the Harambee team don't. The Harambee team are energized, they've got that work ethic, they've had some habits drilled into them, and they come to it fresh and willing. And they know that what they're doing now is a part of a bigger journey for them.
It's been fantastic. We've met young people that have an absolute desire to want to work, to be employed, to be economically active, and Harambee has been the vehicle that's brought them through to us.
With the Harambees, I definitely see a career path within TIVO. A lot of them have such ambition that we can work with. We've seen in the past that we've had ambitious promoters that have worked themselves up into either a sales rep, area manager role, and we definitely do see that in the Harambees that we interviewed.
The matriculants within South Africa, 20% actually know how to actually reach or apply for a job within the corporate world. So 80% we're not reaching at the moment. And for us, that's where Harambee comes in again, going back into the communities, creating those talent pools which we might not have been able to engage with.
We're now getting vibrant young people with a matric, and it's really people that have shown us they want to work. I think the most significant benefit we've seen is a reduction in labour turnover.
The idea is to get you as a call center consultant and to train you and give you as much knowledge as possible, but we want you to be able to grow to any component of our business, so you must be the best of the best.
When you come from disadvantaged communities, in many ways, they are the ones that have the biggest opportunity to step into the space that we're trying to create. In many ways, they're the ones that have the greatest gain from that. And so I get a lot of both personal satisfaction out of that, but I also get a lot of practical satisfaction out of that because they tend to step into our model probably with more excitement and enthusiasm than we get from somebody who sort of doesn't come from that background.
So a great advantage has been that our employers have started to articulate the business case themselves for other employers. And that has created a huge amount of momentum and the virtuous cycle that we're starting to see. But a key contributor, and I'm going to end with this, is to understand that for us to keep engaging employers, for us to keep understanding the real dynamics on the demand side, for us to keep really being able to understand young people and engage with young people and understand that they're a dynamic pool too. They're a dynamic set of customers in the same way as employers are a dynamic set of customers. Our organizational culture and DNA, I think, is absolutely vital to our success. So I'm just literally going to list out what we've thought of as some of the key features of that. The first is that it's highly empirical and data-driven, and we've seen very few of our outputs, our data outputs today. It's market-based and highly responsive despite being a social business. It's very customer-focused, and that's with young people and employers and our government partners. We now have a partnership with the city of Johannesburg, which is working in a similar way. It's very practical and focused on win-win practical partnerships in the way that a good business would always be. The solutions, because we always focused on scale and affordability, not for young people because they don't pay, but affordability so that we can scale, is that our solutions are fit for purpose. We use innovation and technology wherever we can and wherever we need to, but we also have high-touch models wherever we need to as well. And some of the advocacy work we do, some of the personal mastery work we do is very difficult, or even teaching spoken English is actually, there isn't yet a tech solution for teaching spoken English. There's tech solutions for teaching written English, and in fact, spoken English is the biggest deficit. There's a very strong performance and growth-focused culture, constantly wanting to do more, do it better, do it cheaper, do it bigger, and I think that's driven a lot of the scale thinking. And I think most importantly of all is this organization is constantly learning. So I'm happy to have shared some of that with you, and not to understate for one moment that despite all of these qualities in our DNA, it's damn hard work. And we wake up every single morning, we roll up our sleeves and we work for work, we call it. And that work doesn't stop. Thanks.
So we do have time for a few questions, if there are any questions from the audience. No questions? You're all thinking about the coffee break, I can tell. Oh, okay. Coming to you. Oh, my colleague will beat me to it.
I'm Fatuma Birunji from Uganda, but a student at the university. I thank Harambee for the work you are doing, but I am a little bit worried. I have one question. In case of those young people you get from maybe who are not qualified, for example, if they go in, you've got for them some work, you've given them skills, and you give them skills according to what the employer wants, no? So if it is like that and they've started working and sometime because the world changes and the employer will say, no, I don't want you, or another employer will come and will not want anyone who is not qualified. So what happened to such a youth? Thank you.
Shall I just take a couple more questions?
Hey, thank you. I'm Simon from Uganda. I work with Still Contact Uganda. My question is relatively the same like her, but mine is what is the approach of Harambee towards the youth that are working, because we are living in a global environment which is changing every day. So what is the approach for them to remain in the market? Thank you.
And perhaps one more question? Nope, okay. Over to you, Nicola and Lindy.
I'll take a first stab. So I think there are two responses and thoughts I want to share. The first is that our experience is that one of the greatest opportunities, and in fact across most economies, and especially in a world in which the nature of work is literally changing so fundamentally every year, the most important place to learn is on the job. I mean, your qualification isn't relevant a year later either. So, in fact, it's being in the economy and in the workforce and in employment that is some of the best university you can have for work. You also have an incentive for an employer to invest in you as a young person. And what we find, I mean, and I must stress this, Harambee is not a STARS program. This is not like the best kids, these are ordinary kids who meet, we're interested in that middle band, okay, who are average to, just good fluid intelligence, good cognitive potential, and will, and the right attributes for jobs. And they are flying in their jobs, and they're flying in their jobs, and therefore managers love them, and therefore people invest in them, and therefore people support their initiatives. And they're learning, and they're being sent to university sometimes, and things are happening for them. So I wanted to just talk about the fact that it's much worse to be trying to pursue development when you're outside and locked out of the economy than when you're in it. So I just wanted to make that point. But jobs, I think we must give up on the idea of jobs for life. Jobs are not stable. Jobs are not secure for any of us anymore. That's an old-fashioned idea. The question is, have you got more optionality if you've worked than if you haven't worked? Have you got more resilience if you've worked and if you haven't worked? Do you understand markets, and could you start your own business if you've worked versus if you've never operated in the market, you've never understood how the market works? How easy is it to start a business when we're really talking about a business rather than trying to operate more efficiently in your household farm? So I think that I just want to stress that the dynamism of the relationship between education and work, which we find to be a much more non-linear process than it is made out to be.
on the changing nature of work and the transferability of jobs. And what we're talking about, particularly as we talk about the agro-processing industry, is that it's no longer about saying that you're an apple picker and that you'll be an apple picker from your first day in work until the day you become 65 and retire. It's very much about having a set of skills that you're able to build. And therefore, if you're going to enter into the agricultural sector as a driver, you could be a driver in the agricultural sphere, but you could end up working in some industrial company later on. But it's giving you that first opportunity in the job market to develop a skill that can be transferred from one sector to another sector, and therefore keep you within the jobs market, keep you as an employable and employed person throughout your adult life. So Nicola was quite correct in terms of saying we're no longer in a world where you have one job from cradle to grave. Jobs are transferable. Skills are what stay with you and what are attractive into the market and are attracted by employers.
Great. If there are no other questions, then I suggest that we move towards the break. Great. Thank you, Lindy and Nicola.